And we are recording. Rachel, what do we plan to talk about today?
What makes an essential album?
Welcome to the Best Good Friends podcast, a show about nothing hosted by a couple of unimportant people, but we like to talk about it, and hopefully if you're here, you like to listen. My name's Bobby, host of the Monuments in Ruin podcast and owner of Inherent Records in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Joining me is our lovely registered behavior technician by day, hobbyist by night, Rachel, and in this episode we are talking about what makes an essential album. Shall we say ladies first? What do you got?
So I came up, well, first of all, I had to kind of Google essential because I was asking Bobby earlier, what makes an essential album? And he would not tell me the secret.
it's
no,
so,
I'm just kidding.
So
I came up with, I have about 4 or 5 different categories that I came up with for me, for my albums. Necessary, important, personal connection, never sell. And then the definition of essential is absolutely necessary, extremely important. So it kind of all wraps it all together in one, I thought. But I thought of those for me. For like I would never sell them. You know, you have to have some kind of a personal connection to them. You know, something along those lines. So that's where I went with my albums. What did you do?
We crossed over on a couple of those. I went with longevity, meaning that you can just continue to listen to it on and on. I went with emotional connection, so maybe it's a personal experience in your life or a friend or something like that. So we definitely overlap on that one. And then I went with the front to back playthrough without skipping any tracks, meaning like, hey, this is my favorite thing, but the last track I never listened to. That disqualifies it as essential in my opinion. So it's got to be put it on, press play, enjoy the whole thing.
That's it.
And I'll tell you what disqualifies. I'll tell you what disqualifies a lot of albums from essential lists, in my opinion, is those little interludes that sometimes people feel are so necessary in between a track or to close out a track or an opening sample or something.
Right.
Samples are cool, but a lot of great hip-hop albums are ruined because they have to have something that intros the song.
That's interesting to me.
So, and then my last one being the spine-tingling moment. It's hard to describe, and I'm sure that everybody has something different, and it could also kind of qualify under emotional connection, but I put it separate because I can listen to a lot of things that have an emotional connection from memory, but then there's some albums when you hear all of a sudden something just washes over you, and you're like, oh my gosh, my whole body's tingling, or the hairs are crawling on your arms. You're like, this is the moment. I love this record. So if it's got one of those, that definitely the spine-tingling moment. So that's what I'm calling it. So those are the 4. And of the albums I chose, I made sure that all of my choices to discuss fall under all 4 of those criteria. Even though I'm going to talk about different ones. You have a handful over there.
I mean,
I sure do.
I just have 4.
Earlier,
I had to stop myself.
Exactly. That's why I've got a whole stack of stuff.
Yeah.
So you sent me this as an idea, and I was just like, I'm totally on board. We haven't done a music episode yet.
No.
Which, you know, I know that people don't understand. We recorded a previous episode that got canned.
Yes.
Well, we won't talk about what it was, but it was basically on me. I canned the whole thing. I messed something up, and we lost the stuff. But here we are recording our first music episode deep into the podcast. So Best Good Friends has officially reached the musical moment in our journey.
This was a hard one, for sure.
I chose 2 per category.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what all of this is. I'll let you
we
go first.
We might have to revisit this. We might have to revisit this later on as like a 2-parter because really, like with my collection, they kind of are essential. 80%.
Yeah.
Like 80% of them I would never sell.
That's one of the things I thought about when it comes to being music collectors. I mean, whether it be, you know, CD, cassette, 8-track, vinyl records,
and we're
whatever.
Totally opposite too, yeah.
Yeah, as far as our music taste, for sure, we do overlap somewhere. But I mean, the reason why we buy them is because we want to revisit them.
Right.
So, I mean, we live in an age that we can just stream whatever we want. So, what made us physically want to own these? We thought something was essential about them. So, I mean, that's kind of a loose thing, of course, but
Yes, it was
I tried
hard.
to, yeah, tried to narrow it
So I,
down for
I
sure.
stuck with just four that were like my go-tos. My first album, I'm not gonna go in any order, so they're just any. They're not like one better than the other. My first album, I went with Friday Night Lights, which I know you're familiar with.
I
This
love
is
that
like
record.
my go-to album. Doesn't matter what mood I'm in, happy, sad, whatever. I love this record. So good. Explosions in the Sky is on this. As long and it's various artists. But it was released in 2015. A lot of you are familiar with the movie, obviously, that it's based on. Fermi
Yeah,
and
I love.
Panthers, Friday Night Lights,
Oh,
which is also a great movie.
I
Um,
know we're going to get into film eventually, and
mhm.
I've watched that
We could
many
do this
times
one.
over. Yeah, I've watched
Yeah.
that many times over, and I'm not a sports person, whereas you are.
No,
I'm totally down for that. It's a great
we should
film.
do that. I mean, it's
Yep.
just a beautiful release. We talk about this story all the time, how I even found this record. I was just shopping for records on Plaid Room, and I'm like, I know Friday Night Lights. Like, I should just give this a try. I ordered it because it gave me free shipping. And now it's a hard album to even find secondhand. Almost
Yeah,
$100 resale.
yeah,
But it was
yeah.
released
And
in 2015.
one that has
Um,
eluded my library all
yes,
this time, so which is
yes.
hilarious.
And
Hilarious to
no,
me.
I mean it's just beautiful. I'm trying to think of who else. Honestly, my favorite pick. I did album picks as well. So like I picked
Yeah.
one song from every album that I love, and I picked Sanjo Dorado by Daniel Lanos.
Okay,
I don't know if you're
I'm not
familiar with
familiar.
that one.
No. Mm-mm.
That's the one I
So,
picked for this release. It's just
so
beautiful stuff, and it goes so well with the movie too. Like if you read the titles of the songs,
yeah,
you're like, oh, I'm in West Texas. Like you just feel like you're in Texas. Friday Night Lights football. It's just
nice.
beautiful, and that's
So
the reason I just picked it for that reason. Just a
does
go-to feel-good album.
does it fall under all four criteria, or is it just
Um,
specific to?
I picked that really for more of like a never sell, a go-to album.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, my first line of defense was just the longevity, or not line of
Right.
defense. Haha. See how I did that? That
Well,
pun
I listen
intended.
to this
No, I'm just kidding.
record all the time. I listen to it at work on Apple Music. I listen to it at
Yeah.
home. Like I can just listen
Yeah.
to it straight through.
Well, that's the
And
ones
that's
I'm
your
about to talk
category.
about. I could easily do the same thing and have many times over, and that's why it falls under longevity. So repeatability. I started off with Dark Side of the Moon, kind of an obvious one.
Hmm.
You can the story behind me getting this record is funny. I found this guy had put something in a newspaper about having some records. Now that tells you how long I've had this. It
Yeah.
was a
Right.
newspaper thing saying he was selling some records. We have a
Hmm.
thing here. I don't know if you have it at your place, but it's called the Tennessee Trader, and it's basically, hey, we're selling furniture, we're
Yeah,
selling this,
similar.
whatever.
Hmm.
I called this guy. Yeah, called this guy. He was like, yeah, I got some records. I went over. He you can see that the
Yes.
mice have or whatever really enjoyed
Say
this
like
one,
something
but
chewed that thing up.
yeah, the record inside
Hmm.
is just not near mint, but very VG plus. So, or as the hipsters would be like, plus plus man.
And that takes me on another
So
tangent. Like, like an album cover, I like it to be like I have all mine in sleeves, obviously, but honestly, I'm not like crazy about condition of albums, to be honest. I mean, if the record plays nice for me,
yeah.
I'm good. Some of them I am
Well,
picky about, but it's not gonna like deter me from buying.
I'm the same way, and just like this, I mean, I was like, well, I actually didn't have this at the time. I've got a couple
Right.
copies at this point because I bought some
Well,
of
like,
the
how do you know if
reissues
you're
and
gonna
stuff. But
find it again? You know.
well, this one still sounds the best of all the ones that I
Hmm.
bought. I have the European pressing. I don't want to get too deep
Right.
into this, but I got a European pressing and the reissue, and of them, this one is the one that I find sounds the best.
Hmm.
So there's that as well, but this has the longevity, not just for me, and I didn't pick it for this reason, but also worldwide. I mean, this record has been in the top sellers for years. It stayed on the top
Right.
of the charts for years.
Yeah.
So, and again, that just happens to be one that I chose, but again, every song on here, and even the ones where they're like, what about that weird song at the second? It's like, man, I love that ambient, weird, melt down your mind.
That's where we're at
moment.
together, yeah.
Yeah, and then it sinks down, and it brings you right back into it. This is just such a wonderful moment, and it has those spine-tingling moments. It's got it all. So definitely Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, 1973. That is one of my essentials, in my longevity list, followed by another Pink Floyd. Animals, not that I'm going to go into Pink Floyd worship here, but I do have to say that Animals, released in 1977, this one was the first one I thought of when it came to those spine-tingling moments. It's been repressed
how many times, yeah. So it's cool to have that.
And a lot of people will start arguing about The Wall and maybe the Dark Side of the Moon or whatever, but this Pink Floyd Animals. Oh, artwork is not listed in my essentials because it's not music related, but artwork definitely plays into an important emotional aspect.
Yes.
Pink Floyd Animals, front to back. I never skip it. I never have enough volume for it. It's one of those items where I start off maybe on a 5, and then I go to 5.5, then 6, then 7. Then by the end of it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I need to listen to it again. So, longevity, 1977, Pink Floyd Animals, and 1973 Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. That's my first 2 pick in my criteria of 4. So what have you got next?
Let's go with, I have a personal connection one. This is this is not Bobby.
Which is nice, because Emotional Connection is next on my list as well.
I have Won't You Be My Neighbor by Mondo, Mr. Rogers. Nice. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers when I was younger. I still love him, honestly. I collect his books, read his books, and whatnot. I mean, just for me, he just gave, like, a sense of comfort, and, like, you just always, not knew, but you always had in your mind that it was going to be okay, because Mr. Rogers talked about it. He, like, reassured you won't go down the drain.
And the trains.
Right. Just a lot of the barriers he broke as well. I mean, he put his feet in with an African-American cop in a pool. You know, you want to cool your feet off? Come sit down with me, and relax.
Yeah, very controversial at the time.
Yeah, yes. And he, I know that a blind girl had wrote into him, and she was concerned about his fish. So he would say every day, I'm feeding my fish, so she knew that he was feeding his fish. Like, he just cared so much, and I don't know. I will always have a special place for him. He just helped so much with so many things. Parents getting divorced, death of pets. Like, you just always had it, you just felt okay because he talked about it.
And it's really hard even though we imagine that we know, it's really hard for adults to connect and remember what it's like to be a child. And I think that he done a very good job of reminding us as adults, as well as, reminding the kids that there's a connection between us all, and that we are today, building a better world.
Right. Even today, it's a good, reminder to go back and listen to some of his stuff. I still do. My nieces as well, I try to have them, with the annual Tiger, I have them with that too. So it's just so nice. I mean,
wholesome.
Won't You Be My Neighbor? That's what I picked on this album. It's just so good. Just such a good dude.
Yeah, that
was my pick.
And it also something that I guess it's the emotional connection of, like, tapping on that nostalgia too, so it takes you back to a moment in time. Great pick all around. I haven't heard that album specifically.
Yes,
but
this
just
was
connection.
This was a Mondo release, and what year was this? This was a 2018 Mondo release. Music by Jonathan Kirksey, and then it has the original songs by Fred Rogers. And I love the OBI strips, by the way. Do you call them OB or OBI?
I always call them Obi, but I don't know, because I think it's
I just don't know if like the correct
word.
Term. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's OBI or if
so
it's
got
OBI.
that OB strip right here too that gives like the information on the releases, and I love that as well. But
we'll investigate that and confirm whether it's OB or OBI.
Because honestly, I don't know. I hear both, so
yeah.
That's my pick for a personal connection.
Good stuff. And just to talk a little bit more about Mr. Rogers, it's being able to watch it today and still agreeing that it's not made up. It's like he didn't just portray a character, but he really was kind of that way. Because a lot of I'm not going to mention the name, but we previously talked about someone that I enjoyed, and now I just can't enjoy them anymore because it seems like an act. I don't find Mr. Rogers to be that way in any of his lifestyle. I think he was legitimately that dude.
And it's like, even today though, it's just funny in a way that a lot of his, lessons should be, listened to again and taken into consideration, because it's still happening for some reason.
Yeah. Being a good person is pretty self-explanatory when you really break it down, and that's what he did for everybody. It's like, just teach us all that we just need to get along and love each other, be a good person. Okay, speaking of emotional connection, man. Okay, so emotional connection is my next one on the... We'll have to find us a little Photoshop cheer.
Right, I know. Seriously, though.
Emotional connection. Maybe a personal experience while listening to the album or some such. One of mine is the Beastie Boys' Ill Communication, released in 1994. Okay. Now, a lot of the time that I get into these deep connections, I was big into cassettes at this time. I was one of the last of my friends to transfer from cassettes to CDs. I got Ill Communications, 1994, on a green cassette. If anybody bought cassettes back then, you'll remember.
Oh, the colored
green.
Ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I loved this one. I listened to it not just all summer long. I specifically remember summer because of some camping trips and stuff. Driving to the mountains, listening to this with my friends in the car. We jammed it. We played it all year long. Still play it all the time, regardless. That's why it's essential. But with the emotional connection, this takes me right back to memories of some of my friends that are no longer here, and some of my best of friends growing up that we spent together listening to this record. And plus, I don't really know anybody that's not down with the Beastie Boys, so this one kind of fit with everybody. Yeah, so it's like, what are you going to listen to at the party? We're going to listen to the Beastie Boys. Everybody in the room. I'm cool with that.
We were fine with that.
One of my all-time favorites, of course, is the Beasties, but this one definitely hits that emotional connection. The artwork on this one.
I was going to say, even the artwork on that is sweet, though.
Yep.
I love the black and white
collab. So awesome. And the inner, which you couldn't see as well on the cassette, but that tree of life.
Oh, that's cool.
So nice. And a lot of people don't really give credit where credit is due on how awesome some of the Beastie Boys lyrics actually are. I know that it's having fun, and they have a lot of great cultural references in the lyrics and things that just kind of take you to a certain spot. But there's some serious gems in here that are, I'm not going to point out any specific ones, but when you read these lyrics alone, without the music, you're like, man, they are in tune with something that more people should be in tune with. Maybe like Mr. Rogers, for example.
Right.
There's really some of that in there. And there's a lot of great guest stuff in here, and the music samples that they chose, which some of them they played themselves. Very, very cool. So, Ill Communication by Beastie Boys from 1994, and I'm following that up with one that came out many years before that, John Coltrane, A Love Supreme, 1964. This is the only jazz album that I grabbed for this selection, but this is one of my top 10s. When we're talking about essential albums, you would almost say everything should be a top 10. That's not totally the case in this, but A Love Supreme is one of my top 10s. I've listened to this record many times over. I have, there's something special about it. Let me see if there we go.
Yeah.
There's something special about it when I'm listening to it that happens to me. And I don't know how to explain that necessarily, which is why I give it the emotional connection. If you know the story behind this, it's a very kind of a religious thing for him, even though it's instrumental. I feel like he speaks in this music in a way that matters more than a lot of people give it credit for or even acknowledge. But there is something spiritual that's magic in here. And man, what a great record. So 1964, A Love Supreme. I could go on and on about this. I'm trying to not blab too much. But that's my second pick on the emotional connections element of my journey. So I would say that this is probably a good place for us to stop on this episode, and maybe we'll come back and talk about the next two, if that sounds good.
Sounds good.
Anything you want to throw in there before we tap out?
No, just if you guys want to share your essential items, or essential items,
Yeah.
essential albums,
Yeah.
please do.
Yep.
I'm always open to listening to new music and checking new things out, and I'm curious what you guys consider essential. So let us know.
Yep. Hit us in the comments. Shoot us some messages. We have an Instagram, which is at Best Good Friends Pod. That's all one word. And you can find us on YouTube at Best Good Friends. Again, all one word. Be sure to tell your friends you're listening. Tell them to give us a follow, like, subscribe if you're on the YouTube. If you're on the Instagram, like and subscribe. Thank you so much.
Thank
Rachel,
you.
this was a lot of fun. Great topic on
Yes.
this one. So we'll revisit the next two elements that we have coming up. Talk to you later.